Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan, guru-murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. As you will have noticed, we are on location today in the amazing Darjeeling Express restaurant in Covent Garden, because my guest this week is Asma Khan, the woman who created this. And it's a very unusual business with a very unusual set of ideas and philosophies behind it, which we're going to explore over the next hour or so. And Asma, thank you for having us and for letting us in. We're actually talking to you because you've brought out this brilliant book, Amu, which is it's a recipe book. It's a book about how to cook Indian food, which is quite hard in itself, because I know as an Indian boy trying to get his mum to tell him how to cook things, it's really hard to sort of write an Indian recipe, but you've done it really, really well. But more than that, it's about your life and about the stories around the food and about your Amu.
Yes.
So what is Amu first?
Amu is what I call my mother. It's a very common way to call a mother among Indian Muslims. I think it's this combination of Amma, which is what is used in India quite a lot, also in South India quite a lot, and which is the Arabic word for mother.
But you get, perhaps unusually and sort of counterintuitively, in terms of what most people would expect or think, your pioneering female soul, I guess, from your Amu.
Yes. And the great irony is that I didn't realize that till I started writing. I started writing this book in the beginning of the pandemic. As, parents passed away. My school friends passed away with COVID. When it hit India, the second wave, it ravaged. I lost 3 members of my family. And you find that great sense of, there's a thread of fear, also of hope in this book, that I will be there to give this book to her in her lifetime. And as I started writing, I realized as I was remembering all these stories, I literally wrote this book as a story over 21 nights. I didn't sleep. It was this conversation that I was going to have because my mother was going to make it. I was going to make it, and I was going to give her this book. And this was the story of her life. And then I realized, oh my God, this is so much. Because actually, I'm sure even you don't realize how much your parents have influenced you, the impact. And when you repeat things to, someone else, you realize that, oh my God, I've become my mother, I've become my father. And I realized that, she had a huge influence. And what is remarkable is that India at that time is not the India of today. She couldn't have done this today. I cannot open this kind of restaurant in India today. But the India and the Bengal of the 1970s and 80s was a very large-hearted place. People didn't ask you your name. They didn't ask you your faith. They didn't want to know what you're doing. And she's unusual, Muslim, royal family, didn't go to college. No one worked in her family at all. No female had ever worked. She set up this huge empire, a catering empire. She come back at 3 a.m, sitting on top of her empty biryani pot, wearing her silk and diamonds. No one blinked an eye. I mean, I'm just amazed because she was dressed always traditionally. She radiated this traditional thing. Maybe this is why now I know. People ask me why I still wear Indian clothes. I am being Ammu because she dressed in this very her own way, but she spoke the language of liberation. She spoke the language of an emancipated woman. But in her saris and her shalwar kameez, it's so hard to throw stones at her. I think she just managed to do it so well.
So when you say royal family, what do you mean?
I mean, India has tons. It's not like our royal family. So we're all minor royals, nothing so great. We all are these impoverished aristocrats, as my father prefers to call us. And I'm descendant from my father's side, mother's side from royal families.
And so where was it that she built this business and where you grew up?
I grew up in Calcutta. She built this business in Calcutta. She's Bengali, half Bengali. And, my mother's family comes from North Bengal. That's where their palace was. And she essentially just built this whole thing up from nothing. And I spent most of my life in India, in Calcutta.
And do you think that emancipation, that ability to mix this sort of impoverished aristocrat background with business and doing it yourself is also anything to do with sort of the politics of Calcutta in the 70s and 80s, which was radical?
Yes. And the thing is that I think that is my greatest, education was being taught history under a Marxist government. They didn't mess around. There were Marxist texts that we had to read, the Marxist interpretation of history, which is very important to understand, because if you do not understand the economics of politics, you don't understand anything. But Calcutta was unique in that kind of context, that people just let you be. No one asked you anything, and no one cared. And this whole idea that, you were something because of your name or your religion or what you ate.
I mean, we should just explain for people who maybe don't understand the reference.
So the thing is that, this division in India, what you eat, what you don't eat, has become very, very political now. But traditionally, there were states where beef was banned because Hindus don't eat beef. And Gandhi himself was, someone who actually, was vegetarian. And I understand this whole background of, not eating meat comes from. But pork being banned in certain places because, they just are banned pork and beef together. This impacted, minorities, the Christians and the Muslims, disproportionately. But what it did impact is the poor. The poor is the one, they ate the blood of animals, the intestines. Dalits, lower caste people, ate, the bits of the meat that no one else ate, because for them this was a form of protein. And these are the things, untold stories of what is happening in India.
Now, I suppose what you reveal in the book, though, is the role that food plays in our lives, in ways that we perhaps don't instantly think of. I mean, obviously food unites us, we meet, their family moments, but actually, it's about culture, it's about politics. Food runs through every bit of your life.
Yes, and, birth, death, marriages, all of this, in so many cultures, is always linked to food. Food is about memories, but it's also about language. It's, I remember walking into my grandmother's house or my aunt's house, and they said, what will you eat? They wouldn't ask you, how's your day? What did you do? And my mother would never tell me she loved me. She's that generation of women. This is a very Western idea. You kiss your children and kiss them goodnight, and you say you love them. This doesn't happen in our culture. It's happening now because people are watching it on television, and they're mimicking that. But in our culture, it didn't. But my mother would sit and watch me eat. And this was her language of love. It took me a long time to realize this. It took me, while writing this book, I realized that she was telling me she loved me. There's a biryani recipe there. I only worked this out that, every time I failed in maths, or I got into trouble, or I bunked school and I got caught, which is I skipped school, I would get biryani, or my brother lost his cricket match. And this was the thing that was all okay. So she didn't tell me I was forgiven. She didn't tell me that it was okay, that she understood why I'd run away, that, maybe, it's okay to fail in some subjects sometimes. None of that. I wasn't forgiven. I was given biryani. And I love that, because then you ate biryani and then everything was fine. I thought, fine, she's forgiven me. And this kind of unspoken language is so beautiful.
But it's not that conscious, is it? It's just, it's just the relationship. I mean, we all still have it.
Yes.
I still have it with my mum. I'm terrible at saying I love you to my mum.
Yeah.
But I know that if I eat her food,
that's it.
That's the same thing.
Yes. Yes. And you eat it and it's so strange. And how, another generation, I don't know, Krishnan, how many generations of South Asians it will take before this conversation through food stops. And actually, I don't want it to end. Yeah. I don't want it to end, because I think it's so wonderful. It is unconscious. And then when you see it, you smile. And you see it happening with other people. I see it in the restaurant. The table of 6 people, I know there's a child there, because I see that connection between an older person and a younger person, the way they pass their food to them. And I think this is happening in my restaurant.
Right, so let's get to the restaurant. This is a restaurant not like other restaurants. So how did it begin?
Well, it began not because it was meant to be a restaurant. It began from my house. It began for all the right reasons why people should serve food, why people should cook food. Food should not be an ego trip. It should not be about making money. It's about service. It's about healing. It's the most intimate way of connecting to someone. You give them the food, and then when you realize that you want to actually make this your life. I began from my house. I didn't have money. Also, I was a bit embarrassed because I had a job in the House of Lords and I didn't take it. I had a PhD, and everyone would laugh at me saying that I want to cook. And I also felt I was letting down all the women in my family.
Because how were you here?
I I got married. I had an arranged marriage, which is different from forced marriage. I'm amazed that people still make that kind of. It's an arranged marriage. It's a bit like speed dating, but then you end up getting married.
You agreed?
Yes, I agreed very happily. I was thrilled. I was so happy that someone wanted to marry me because I had a bit of a bad reputation as a troublemaker.
Well, can I ask you an impertinent question then?
Yes.
Which is before you got married?
Yeah.
Because when did you get married?
Well, I was 22 in 1991.
1991?
Yeah.
So India's modernising by that stage.
Yeah.
Had you had a boyfriend?
Oh my God, you're asking me this question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you had a boyfriend of your own?
I just hope that my mom doesn't see this.
And then you had an arranged marriage, which is quite unusual.
Yes. I don't know why I said yes to you. I could have lied, but I can't lie to you. I can't lie to you. And no one has ever had the guts to ask me this question. Oh my God. Yes, I had a boyfriend. And I couldn't have married him because he was inappropriate in lots of ways.
The wrong kind of person.
Now I'm not going to ask you as a reply anymore because my whole family is going to fall apart with the speculation of who this is. Oh my God.
Oh, good. But in terms of, I mean, this is a bit of a dogleg, but in terms of sort of your mindset.
Yeah.
In terms of having an arranged marriage.
Yes.
How were you able to sort of buy into that, having already had romance of your own?
I think that I couldn't imagine hurting my mother, and I wanted to make her happy. And I realized that, seeing me married would make her happy. And so everybody had an arranged marriage. I knew I had to have an arranged marriage. But I told my mother, I'm not marrying anyone from the royal family. I'm not marrying any feudal type. I'm not going into a joint family. I want to marry someone educated. I want to marry someone liberal, someone very left-wing, someone empathetic. She found me one. I mean, my husband was a professor in economics, extremely left-wing, very liberal, very, very chilled out person. Because the first thing he told me, I don't know how to cook. He said, listen, I don't believe in gender roles. I'll cook for you. The fact that he turned out to be such a bad cook, that's a separate issue. But that was his first reaction. And, he told me, I want you to study. I want you to do something with your life. So really encouraging, extremely sympathetic, open-hearted person. And he, encouraged me to study law.
So why hadn't you learned to cook from your mum?
Because I was going to be princess, no? I was going to marry one of the boys in my clan, and I was going to have 5 servants, and I was going to have a great life. That's what everybody else did in my family. The fact that nobody wanted to marry me, and I couldn't be princess, I hadn't thought that would happen.
So your mother never felt the need to teach you to cook because it wasn't,
no.
The way mums
all
over the world to teach their children to cook because they need to learn to cook.
No.
Because you didn't need to.
Because I was going to marry, some Prince Charming.
Yeah. So you're over here,
having
got married, your husband has come to Britain.
Yeah. I can't believe you asked me about my boyfriend. Oh my God. Okay. Yes. Sorry.
So then, how do you learn to cook? Or why do you learn to cook?
It was a real shock. And the thing is that it's hard to imagine what, this country was, what India was 30 years ago, by way of communication and travel. I couldn't go home. There was no WhatsApp or phone calls or cheap calls. It was a real uprooting. I came here and I couldn't communicate. So it was very tough. And Cambridge was quite harsh. I'd never been to this country in winter. I had no idea how terrible it is. And I was in this kind of fellow's house, there wasn't heating. So it was very tough. And then when I had this experience where I smelled someone making paratha, I had not realized till then what I felt like. I wept outside this place with the paratha and the ghee of the kind of, as the parathas was being tossed. I realized this is the lowest point in my life. From here, I'm going to fly. I'm going to use food. I'm going to liberate myself. I'm going to feed people. I'm going to bring joy to other people. I'm going to heal them. And that aroma of the food reminded me, this is who I am. And that's when I realized I have to learn to cook. I told my mother I want to come back. She told me, oh no, you can't. There's a huge scandal. You can't leave your husband. So I said, fine, then you teach me how to cook. So that was the alternative. Either I left him, and he's really sweet, and there was not his fault. I was just hungry. I was hungry, and I was...
So she did teach you?
Yeah. I went back. And I learned very quickly. So because I spent so much time in the kitchen, I did know how everything was being made. I know the aromas. It was a very immersive experience. I used to hang around the kitchen. I used to keep the aromas, the sound, like things like kosha mangsha, which is this kind of roasted meat. How you scrape, that sound, that's where kosher comes from. I knew that sound. I replicated that in Cambridge, and then I knew I'm getting it right.
So go back to sort of cooking for people at home.
Once I could cook almost everything I wanted to eat, I started by inviting people because I wanted to make friends. In Cambridge, if you're not a student and you're not an academic, you're nobody. And because my husband did supervisions in the house, this was a study. He told me, don't bring people in and don't make friends with my students because it's not professional. Who would I make friends with? You didn't have any kind of group. You went and stood outside Sainsbury's and hoped that somebody would talk to you. Everyone bloody ignored you. And so eventually I started inviting people. I met on the streets, South Asians, Pakistanis, Indians. I said, I can make chapli kebab. There was like Pied Piper of Hamelin. Everybody was following me. Then, when I moved to London and I finished my PhD, I had 2 kids. I realized that the last thing I want to do is to work as a lawyer. And I definitely do not want to teach. So I could walk into a room and own it when I cooked. This was me, so powerful. Also me able to heal and embrace people and lift people up. And I just thought, I have to find a way to do it. And at that time, 10 years ago, you didn't see someone like me in food media. There was Madhur Jaffrey and then there was nobody. And I couldn't imagine that I could go to a restaurant. I thought you needed lots of money. You do. But I started from home because that was the only way to feed people.
So how would they work? Would they be strangers coming?
They were supposed to be strangers, but they were people who took pity on me and came, people who I had fed for free many years. And then through word of mouth, I sold out immediately. People would come, and I think that the food also helped a lot because people were getting things that they just could not get in London.
So, well, what was different about the food that you were cooking? Because obviously there have been Indian restaurants in London for decades.
What they cook in Indian restaurants is not the food anyone eats at home. I mean, you and I both know that. It's like saying, I'm going to go and eat European food. We don't have generic food, Indian food. And the huge Punjabi influence of tomatoes and cream in everything, the sweetening of all the food, this is not our food. It's a hot country. You have so much ghee and cream, you will not wake up the next morning. So I think what was so refreshing for people who came to my house, it was straightforward food. I made things like, aloo chop, which is the Calcutta Anglo-Indian, potato stuffed with keema, with mince inside. Straightforward food. I wasn't trying to be anything different. It's home food. And I just cooked because I only made whatever I felt like eating.
So how do you go from that to Darjeeling Express?
I got kicked out. Basically, my kids had it. I did this behind my husband's back. I'm a bit ashamed to admit that. But now he knows, of course. He found out. And I used to do this whenever he was away. My husband is very, very academic. Doesn't like lots of people. The fact that there were people eating in his study and in his dining table would have freaked him out. But I thought, he doesn't have to know. And the house is super clean every time he came back. And I moved to a pop-up in Soho, just down the road from here. I was very unsuccessful. At that time, that you had Indian food in a pub, the idea of a pop-up was unusual. Everyone would say, oh, no, I don't want your curry love. And I would give free samosas. People didn't take free samosas because they don't want to be trapped into eating a meal. It was horrendous.
How were you paying for it?
It was very low. The pub was really sweet. The manager was amazing. Pascal would like you to take a token amount. So it was just a kind of token fees that we had to pay. And I lost money. It was just me and one more person. I washed the plates and I did all the shopping. I cooked, I served. I couldn't afford to hire anybody. It was really, really tough. I wasn't willing to be defeated. I imagined I would be successful. I imagined people would love my food. It was very humiliating. And for all those people who are where I was, when you're getting the pushback and your dreams are being stepped on and it's being crushed and you're not getting success, pick yourself up. You will get it. You will make it. My life changed. I had Faye Mashler, who was the food critic for Evening Standard. On her 70th birthday, someone told her she cooks the food of Calcutta and of your childhood. She grew up in India. She turned up. I gave her food of her childhood. She wrote this amazing review. We had so many people, including all these guys who said no curry love. They stood for hours to eat my food. And that day, everything changed. And after a very successful time in the pub, there was the landlord there. I had to close because my son wasn't doing his GCSE notes. He was going to fail in geography. So I decided to close. I'm a typical Indian mother. My son can't possibly fail in his GCSE. How humiliating. So I told them I'm going to go. I told this person, I didn't know he was the landlord, that this is my last week. He told me, you can't leave. This is not how your story ends. I said, it does. I have to go and do GCSE notes because my son's made no notes. He offered me this site and I went out of politeness because he always tipped my staff. By that time, I had staff because I was making money. And I went just to make him happy. But when I walked in, I realized this can be mine. This can be ours. This team of women who I've got in my kitchen, we can come here, we can open a female restaurant. I couldn't breathe. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to do it.
So this was the place off Carnaby Street?
Yes.
So how did you find your women to go and make this?
I already had them working for me in the pub. It wasn't that I didn't want to have men. They don't know how to cook this kind of food. They all learned at culinary school. And they cook exactly the same way. But I already had the women in place, but all of them were working part-time. Until we actually were 1 month into the restaurant, everybody still worked part-time.
But where had the women come from? How had you put them together?
By word of mouth, because the thing is, some of them were cleaners in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. They were cleaners there, and the others were nannies in the school where my kid went. And I realized that they were looking after French families they were living in. And I knew for sure that they're not going to be cooking their food because this doesn't happen. So I invited them to come and eat in my house because I realized that they're living in and they can't. And also on Sunday, they were just all kicked out because they weren't required on Sunday. They had nowhere to go. So they would come to my house and watch ZTV and Hindi films. We used to see Mughal-e-Azam on repeat and sing together and eat. And first time they came to my house, none of them sat down. This is a class and caste factor. They felt that I was someone superior to them. They wouldn't sit on my chairs. They stood. So I told them, I'm going to sit on the floor. We can't get lower than that. All of you sit on the floor. But the relationship changed very quickly. They felt equal to me very quickly. This is all in their mindset. I told them, I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy we're singing together. But when you come from a place like India, divided by food, by name, by caste, these barriers are so entrenched in you. This became this formidable team of women. Darjeeling Express is not me. We started this journey together. It has always been this group of women who are still here today. Their grandmothers, the average age of women cooking in my kitchen now is 50. They're not young, but they have life experience.
So how did you become this famous face? How did you get the profile?
I'm not sure. I think that there were lots of Asian women who were cooking around the same time as me. I think the big difference probably was that I spoke about politics. Everyone who thinks that, keep quiet and don't be political, completely wrong advice. If you lose out on something, which I've been losing out on leases and things because people think you're a firebrand and you're a disruptor and all. So this is the thing that I suppose I was not intimidated. I would not live my life with my head down. I was born to fly with my women, set the world on fire. Because what drove me was not just my own ambition. I'm actually quite lazy, and if you come to my house, you'll be shocked to see how messy I am. I'm supremely lazy. What picks me up and what pushes me is the fact that I want to change the narrative for other women. It is not my own ambition. And I think this ironically worked for me. It never was pushing my story. I was pushing the political narrative about how women are discriminated against. When Netflix came up, I told them I will only do it if I can show my entire team and you don't script me. And I talked about my mother's reaction to my birth. My mother's one of 5 daughters. My mother still doesn't talk about what her upbringing was. I know she was discriminated against. She will not speak about it.
So how have you been discriminated against in this business?
The thing is that it's very, very covert. It's very sly. In India, it's very thin. Oh no, not girls. You can't do this. You can't study. You can't go and play cricket on the street. Or who's your husband? Who's your father? Who's your brother?
You know what you're up against.
Yeah. This is all completely like you're not good enough. Here it is very. People have asked me, do you have a business advisor? Who else is working with you? It's just me and me and me. No, not good enough. And it's very sly. The whole idea that women are discriminated against, that they hit the glass ceiling, that we are kept in our place. Wake up. This is happening here. Because I found that I think me being female was a bigger problem than all the other things that I am. I felt that men prefer to work with men. The way that networking happens, I'm Muslim, I don't drink. I can't go out, I have kids, Not that they're grown-up kids, I don't have to stay at home. I have a cat, I go home for the cat. But the thing is that, how do I network? If I'm not going to the football match with you, I'm not going to the pub with you. I didn't go to Eton, I didn't go to Harrow, I'm not wearing that tie. That identifies you as someone who went to Downing College. If I don't have those symbolisms, I cannot connect. How am I going to win? It is really, really, really bad, and no one talks about it out of fear of being, seen as a troublemaker. So what?
So is this industry controlled by networks?
Completely. I would describe hospitality as an all-white, Mayfair, men-only club. Women are, invited as guests. They're not powerful. They're on the fringes. And I am the only one who writes, in articles where there's a risk of me being sued, by these very thin-skinned male chefs. I talk about what's happening, the bullying, and I speak about, discrimination and racism. And racism absolutely permeates this entire system.
How?
Everyone has to play a role. Your kitchen porter is black. Your sommelier is French. The girl at the reception is going to be blonde. And she's going to be pretty. Everyone is cast in a role. I was staggered yesterday. I have a young girl. She's only, she's very young. She's a teenager. Was told by an Asian Indian family, because she's black, they would prefer to be served by someone else.
What, here?
Yesterday.
In the restaurant?
Yes. And I stepped in. I made them apologize to her. I was not aggressive and abusive or angry because then I'm just like them. But I told everybody, you can't do this. You cannot do this. And the thing is, if you don't call it out and you don't stand up for it, where is race mentioned? Where is gender being mentioned in hospitality? Why am I the only one who talks about it? You think that I'm the only one who's seeing discrimination? The idea that the powerful, mainly white, mainly men, and they network to each other, they're all thin-skinned and they know each other very well. You are an outsider. And either you suck it up and you join this whole group because you want to be successful, or you're the heckler outside. I'm the heckler. The fact that I've managed to, get where I have, that's just, I'm bloody lucky. I could have just been sunk by all of them.
But it's interesting that you raised, the sort of the almost sort of taboo subject of Indian racism against black people.
Yes. It's so bad. I have an assistant who's black, who's from America, and the restaurant was quite tight. So we were always at the back. I had people saying, I'm nervous about my bag. Why is this person? Why are you sitting next to that person? Can you ask him to leave? My assistant, who I'm sitting next to, and we're working together. People, Indians, would call me and say, I'm not feeling safe with my things here. Why is he walking up and down? He's making me nervous. He's walking up and down because we got a bloody crisis with not having enough tables. He's trying to find. So we're sitting at the back trying to find, because we know 55 people are going to come and we don't have seats. And all the Indians would think that, he's trying to steal their stuff. We should be so ashamed. We should be so ashamed. One of the reasons I have Tangra prawns, which is, on my dish, it's an Indo-Chinese dish. The racism that Chinese people faced when they came from Tibet, when the Dalai Lama fled, because again, they ate pork and beef. Everybody hated them. No one gave them a job. Luckily, many of...
Sorry. That's my mum.
And now that you put the phone off, and when you put it back on, there'll be 15 missed calls. A panic. Where are you? What's happened? Are you okay? She would have called everybody. Yeah. Welcome to South Asian mothers. Yes.
So within all of that, why do you have to keep moving the restaurant? Why do you come up against these problems?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I knew this was not permanent. The one I moved during the pandemic because I needed to protect my team. We've all forgotten that time. No vaccine. You couldn't get tested. My team of women in the kitchen, disproportionately impacted by COVID. The community, Nepalis, Indians, Sri Lankans, Pakistanis. So I couldn't risk working in a small kitchen, but I could not risk closing. They needed to earn as well. I needed to earn. So we did takeaway. We did biryani delivery, which I never imagined. Packing biryani and posting it. It went to Edinburgh. The first time it reached, I was in tears. I told my mother I posted biryani to Scotland. And so we had to move to a bigger place. This place has a massive kitchen. It has showers. It has changing rooms. So we moved in here, but I knew it was not for a long time.
But what's you up against in terms of finding a new premise?
People who see me as a threat. So it's not just that, I don't have deep enough pockets. People would prefer to give it to a chain or to, some fancy investor coming in from abroad. We have a lot of foreign investment in hospitality. And we've had this for a long time. People come in because it's the effortless way to get a visa, to get the right to stay in this country. You invest, you want to open a pencil factory, you need to at least tell them what machinery you're buying. You want to open a restaurant, no one asks you any questions because they think you don't require any skills to run a restaurant, of course. So everybody wants to be in London. London is the food capital of the world. And that is something I'm very proud of. That comes at a price. So every time there's a decent place coming up, you're competing with all of these people. But landlords prefer to go in for who they see as safe pair of hands. I have often argued with landlords, are you picking a football team? Why are you trying to pick a bloke who looks like you, who's reliable, who's well-built, some fancy guy in a suit? Somehow you think this is this is not bloody Mortal Kombat, some video game. And I probably would win as well, But still, the idea that you're seen as weaker, as less reliable, as a female of color, is staggering. But the problem is, these prejudices are so deep-rooted. And if you question them, they'll say, oh, I don't think like that. Of course you do. Of course you do. Why are you self-selecting? Problem with hospitality is their self-selection.
So I suppose what you could do, if you wanted to, would be to go in with some big financial backers and blow people out of the water with money. They'd probably be men. Why don't you do that?
I've done one arranged marriage. It's the same thing. This is a marriage with money, right? So this guy's a stranger. The moment there's a crisis, that's when you really realize so many relationships I know broke down over the pandemic. Partnerships split, people closed down. There was big fallouts between chefs and owners. This is like any other relationship. You don't know how strong the relationship is till the first crisis hits. And I'm not getting into bed with some stranger because, of money. And then they're going to tell me what to do. I don't deal very well with that. My whole life, I fought for that. I don't want anyone to feel they own me. I want to be free. I want to be free so I can speak. And they will silence me.
And what do you think doing this and doing this for the people you work with has done to you? I mean, how has it changed you?
I am running on empty, to be very honest. I don't admit this to everybody. But as I admitted I have a boyfriend, I might say this to you as well. I am running on empty. I'm just giving and giving. I feel exhausted deep inside me. I feel frazzled. I feel like I can't continue sometimes. But then I realize that even in my death, I will be useful because there is this legacy I will leave. A young woman, an older woman, an Asian, a black person, a Latino, can go into a room and tell people, you remember Asma? She was successful. I will be like her. And I'm sure they will be better than me. And every hurdle I fell on and I bled, I moved that hurdle for her. And this is what drives me. The thorns, the blood, my blood, is for a purpose. It is to leave that road clear for others. I'm very, there's this poem by Rabindranath Tagore, who's Nobel laureate from Bengal, Akla Chalore, which is walk alone. And in the darkness, set fire to your ribs so people can see the path. That's what I'm doing. And this is how I can get up every day and come into work. The pushback, the doors being closed on me, still happening. Imagine it's happening to me. What's happening to other women? And this is why I cannot walk away. I will stay and I will continue to fight.
And does it get harder or easier as you get more successful?
Harder. You have more enemies. It gets harder. Also, you grow older and I think that physically it's tough. It's very hard to work like this. But definitely you have more enemies and you lose all your friends. I've lost all my friends that I knew before my success. I don't have a single one.
Why?
I don't know. Ask them. But I don't have any friends that I had before. And so I made new friends. And real friends, I have very few. And it gets very difficult. It gets very difficult. If you want to speak about anything, you don't feel safe discussing everything. So yeah, it's a bit tough. It's a bit tough, but I think it's true for everybody. I'm sure you feel this too as well. You've got to be very cautious what you say, who you interact with. You've got to protect your family. And I have a husband who really doesn't want any limelight at all. People stop us on the street and says, "Oh God, how do they know your name?" I was like, God, please. But I've kept him out completely. People still ask me, "Are you still married?" Of course I'm still married. Poor guy. He needs a medal for still being married to me. But it's trying to protect your loved ones. It's very lonely.
Well, we can hear the sounds of the restaurant, I suppose, cranking into gear and people arriving. So what's going to happen? If you don't find premises in the next few days, how would you keep this going?
Well, the thing is, everything's going into storage because I have to clear out of here. And then I'll continue to look. And in the time being, I'm, working on film scripts, on writing. I'll still keep doing things. And till we get a restaurant, I'm sure we will. I make money where I go. I get Paul Rudd and Dan Levy in my restaurant. Come on. You will get bangs for your bucks. You get me in, you'll have, Hollywood and Bollywood coming in. So maybe on that basis, someone might give me a restaurant, or the fact that someone wants to understand that you've got to be equal, that you rise above your own bias. But I'll get there. I'll get something.
I'm sure you will. The Paul Rudd, just because you mentioned it, did Paul Rudd come here because he knew about it, or
yes,
he just happened to be here, or
when,
what was it?
No, he knew. He'd watched Chef's Table many times, and when I met him, I told him, "I've got to take a picture with you." He said, "Oh my God, I want to take a picture with you." The whole restaurant kind of fainted. And when he bought Dan Levy, he promised that he'd bring him. And because he had a booking, he just added an extra, got Dan Levy in. He made the booking on his own. We get all kinds of bookings. We only realized when he sat down that he was actually Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
And when I told my mom, she was like, "Who's this guy?" I said, "He's Phoebe's boyfriend." Because that's all my mom knows from friends. That he's Ant-Man and everything. She's completely lost. He was incredible. No, he just turned up and he came 3 times and he's been great and, stays in touch and, has the book, is cooking from it in his new house.
So if you could change the world in any way, how would you change it?
I think what I would really make mandatory, irrespective of where you are, I would make all children learn about slavery, colonialism, occupation, how power works. Because I think history is very, very important. You're seeing this today everywhere. It's being repeated in places. And I think the weak never get to tell their story. I think that these things are not discussed. And I think that the wealth of the West is built on the blood of Black and Asian people, on free labor, on slavery. This is how I want these stories to be told. And it's very easy to do. We missed out on generations, the generation of children now in school. Tell them the story so that they learn not to hate and they learn to respect their privilege.
Asma Khan, thank you very much indeed. I'm so glad we did this in person, even if it is without food.
Yes.
But thank you very much indeed. Our producer is Nina Hodgson. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, then please do give us a rating and a review. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Until next time, bye-bye.